Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our podcast, our Sunday morning roundtable. My name's Billy Bob. I'm on the West Coast. It's about 9 a.m. I have two special guests that this is their first time live streaming, and they're nice enough to jump on the stream and have a discussion with us. I've got my regular special guest, Greg Rosen. He's streaming live from a suburb. No, he's not from a suburb. He's in. Are you in a suburb in Chicago, Greg? Or
no?
It's not a suburb. So you're in the city. You live in the city, Greg?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's 11 a.m. in Chicago. Darryl, you are in Georgia. Whereabouts? You don't have to say if you don't want to.
Yeah, don't make me dox myself. But no, I'm actually in Florida. So East Coast time.
Now, why did I assume you were in Georgia? Did you lie to me or did I misremember?
Don't think I ever said anything, but
I probably misremembered. Okay. Yeah. So you're in Florida, East Coast time. Nick, you're also West Coast.
Yep.
You're my same time zone, 9 a.m. So yeah, this morning we were gonna just have a roundtable discussion, and the title that I came up with was a Sunday morning roundtable on the exploitation of ideological differences. So I do believe that what happens in our society is that we're kind of inundated with a lot of different narratives and ideological explanations for what's going on. And then I think our differences are kind of weaponized against us to keep us separate and at each other's throat, as a working class. But that's not really exactly what I want to talk about. I think that's a legit aspect of what's going on as far as, how they inculcate these differences within us. And then, they turn us against each other. But I'm more interested in kind of just having a comparative analysis about, what's going on and how do we explain reality and how do we perceive reality and some differences of opinion. So I think it's a real timely discussion this morning to kind of maybe discuss the Israel lobby and the role that Israel plays in domestic politics, international politics. I think, with the release of the Epstein files, there's a recent release of a bunch of Epstein files. And I think that's what everybody's kind of talking about this morning and yesterday. And so there's many ways to view that. And one popular perspective is that, kind of our government has been captured, by Israel lobby and by proponents of the state of Israel that have kind of captured our government and are using it to benefit not the people in this country, but they're using it to benefit, the state of Israel. So it's a legit interesting perspective. So how do we, how about this? So Darryl, I know that you can probably enunciate and elaborate on this perspective in a much better way than I can. Do you want to just kind of put forth maybe your thinking on this topic?
Yeah. So I mean, there's really two parts to this, or maybe not two parts. Now you say Israel lobby, which is absolutely a distinct thing. But the Israel lobby, I would argue, actually exists inside of another thing, which is for the Jewish lobby. The Israel lobbies distinctly, it deals with PR in America for the state of Israel. It deals with funding, foreign aid, military aid for Israel. And it deals with interventionist wars in the Middle East. And then you also have more broadly the Jewish lobby. And really to understand what the Jewish lobby is, you really have to understand the history. And I'm not trying to give a whole history lesson here on the Jewish people as a people. But they're really identified by their history of persecution, of being a diaspora for 2,000 years, a stateless people. So you can imagine after 2,000 years of not having a country, not a land of their own, they're obviously very focused on keeping this little piece of land that they do have now. And the way they do that is through a very organized network of NGOs, organizations. There's really nothing like it in America. If you were to say the black lobby, the white lobby, the Asian lobby, those things don't exist. But the Jewish lobby absolutely exists. It exists through the the Jewish World Congress, the ADL, the I think it's like the Federation of Presidents, which is basically an umbrella organization that is comprised of like over 100 different Jewish organizations, and they meet every year, multiple times a year, and decide what they're going to do, not just for Israel but for the Jewish people. And I think when you have a certain group of people that have dual loyalty, or not even dual loyalty, they're more loyal. They're solely loyal to a foreign nation and a foreign people. I don't think that works in the interests of every other American, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, whatever. They have billionaires, and you'll argue they're a minority of billionaires, but unlike all the other billionaires, Warren Buffett is not funding white interests, right? He has philanthropy, and he donates money to political things, but they're not exclusively white interests. Versus if you look like Ron Lauder or Larry Ellison, these guys, their goals are very much different than the rest of the billionaire class. And yeah, I'd say that it's a huge issue.
Yeah, I think you say a lot of things that are, observably true. I think, when we talk about the Jewish people, we definitely can see that, there's a very small minority of the total population, but they are, disproportionately represented in positions of, wealth, power, and influence, I think more than any other, particular group. But here's the thing. So one of the criticisms that came to mind when you were explaining that was that, number one, not all Jewish people, think the same. And some people, some Jewish people aren't, extremely tribalistic. So I think there is, because of the history you described within, the Jewish people, there is a cohesion, a degree of cohesion that is far more than, like black people or white people, right? Right. Black people are just a real diverse group of people. But if you're Jewish, you're a very small minority, and you have a certain degree of cohesion, which is to a much greater degree than other ethnic groups, right? But I think it's inappropriate, to just whitewash all of them and say they are all like this, right? Like that's just stereotyping. That's not a correct analysis, because there's a lot of great Jewish people who would be in opposition to, what Israel is doing, to what a lot of people would consider the tribalistic interest of, international Jews, right? So, but I do think that by and large today, a probably a large majority of those who identify themselves as Jewish probably do support the state of Israel, and that's a problem.
80%. Yeah.
Yeah, I that could be true. I'm not gonna say I don't know, but no, I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah.
But there's a context though. So a lot of what you're saying is true. So we have this real tight, ethnic cohesion, you could say, and you have a shared interest regarding a certain policy for the state of Israel, and then another general policy, just thinking in terms of, the Jewish people, like what is in the best interest of the Jewish people, and then based on that, these billionaires will pursue policies after they, talk amongst themselves about what they decide is in the best interest of their people. So that definitely, I believe, is true and legit, and that takes place on the planet. But it's within a greater context of, again, like you said, Jewish billionaires are still a minority of billionaires, and what happens is the Jewish lobby ends up being a powerful faction within a class-based establishment, Western ruling establishment, and they have influence, but they're not, their influence isn't total. Their influence is, they have a lot of influence, but I think that, there's all kinds of other very powerful factions, and this is kind of how the establishment operates, right? They have a mechanism for, all of these groups that have competing as well as overlapping interests, and the overlapping interests is what ultimately decides their strategy. And so they're all interested in maintaining an oligarchy, in keeping the working class from becoming the ruling class, and pursuing a strategy of total global hegemony and of controlling every government, market, and resource on the planet. And so and within that dynamic, I think people who identify as Jews, and especially the billionaires who identify as Jews, they are not opposed to that greater agenda, and they are assets to continue to achieve that greater agenda. But that's a greater class agenda where you have billionaires of all races, of all ethnicities, within the Western establishment. And so I just don't think that it makes a lot of sense to focus on the lack of a white lobby or the lack of a black lobby. I'm not sure perceiving reality in terms of ethnicity is useful, because I think the ruling establishment sees things through a class lens, and they want to maintain their class as the ruling class. And they have certain class interests, and that's what they're pursuing. And as part of those class interests, of course, they want to keep the vast majority of us, the working class, from understanding, from political power, and from being able to meddle with, influence, or be obstacles to what they're trying to do. And so that's the greater context within which this a lot of things that you say are true about Jewish tribalism, a disproportionate Jewish power. These things I think are real and exist, but they take place within this greater paradigm. So I've said a lot. Let's you want to respond, Darryl, or do we want to hear?
Yeah. I'm trying to think how to respond first. So when you say that it's all a unified class interest, for sure there's like a unspoken agreement among the elites. And as you pointed out, and I agree, that the majority of the billionaire class is non-Jewish, right? And so of course everybody has an unspoken agreement that what's good for me is good for you because we're in the same tax bracket. What I disagree with is that the lens of just viewing everything through class or wealth, or like this form of materialism, is a very narrow view and doesn't actually represent the reality that we live in. There's different cultures, religions, races. It's way more than just tax brackets. And if you look at, and how does the oligarchy maintain its power, right? It does it through the media, which is, it's not just disproportionately Jewish, it is majority Jewish. Look at academia, look at the Harvard, Yale, all these Ivy League schools. We have 9 Ivy League schools. We have 7 Jewish presidents. If you go over the past 20 years, 75% of the top 25 schools in the country are run by Jews. And when I say Jews, I'm speaking about tribalistic, obviously, these people that think in the form of, it's literally Jewish supremacy. All right. They think of themselves as God's chosen people. They have a history of persecution, so they're very paranoid about losing their power, being found out, that they're all like together and they have these organizations. But when you say that, something you said before is that it's sort of the what is it, the dog wagging the tail, or is it the tail wagging the dog as far as Israel's concerned? And Greg, I believe when you responded to Billy Bob before, you I understand the thing that Israel's a vassal state. It's a proxy country to America in this global empire that America currently has. I would agree with you if we were talking about 50 years ago. I would agree with you if this was Cold War times. But the power that Israel has now, whether it's through funding, whether it's through blackmail, like the Epstein network, Israel really is pulling the reins when it comes to foreign policy. And I don't see Israel as some cash cow that all the elites are able to milk and everybody is benefiting, all the non-Jewish elites are benefiting from. Maybe you could tell me, if let's say I'm a non-Jewish elite who is not in, let's say, the defense industry, or the oil industry, even though I think that's false. I don't believe that oil was the main driver behind the past 25 years of Middle East policy. And I'd cite John Mearsheimer and the Israel lobby. And there was another professor that wrote a pretty good paper on it. I forget his name right now. I think he was at NYU. It was called the Israel lobby in the United States. But so what benefit does Israel actually offer non-Jewish elites that are not, say, in the defense industry or tech or oil? Because honestly, I mean, oil isn't even a thing. Like they said, oil was the main driver in Iraq. I understand the Halliburton, Dick Cheney reference, but the whole rest of the admin, they were neocons, which was, it was strictly about it. So I don't really see how non-Jewish elites benefit from the state of Israel. Maybe you guys could enlighten me on that.
Well, Mearsheimer is wrong that it's not about oil. I mean, that's the main interest in the region.
Okay, so
I mean, Roosevelt went and established the alliance with Saudi Arabia strictly for oil, right? The end of World War II.
Okay, but throughout the 90s, prior to the invasion of Iraq, prior to the war on terror in 9/11, we didn't have oil. The oil lobby wasn't lobbying and advocating for intervention. What they were advocating for was removing sanctions. Whenever Bill Clinton, like, pretty much nixed Iran completely in the early 90s, I mean, the oil lobby spent millions of dollars trying to reverse that and not overthrow Iran, but just remove the sanctions. The
sanctions weren't the problem. It was the nationalization of the oil industry.
I'm sorry, say again.
Iran nationalized their oil industry.
Okay. But then we weren't allowed to purchase that oil, correct?
I don't know that we stopped purchasing their oil right away, but that wasn't the issue. It was our oil companies could no longer profit off of it.
Okay. I mean, I didn't.
That's why we overthrew the Shah, or the government, and put in the Shah in 52 or 53 because they had nationalized the oil.
Okay, understood. But I'm reading Mearsheimer. I'm reading, hold on. I did write some notes so I could give you the exact study. The author and professor was James Petrus in The Power of Israel in the US. And I mean, he makes the argument that, the oil lobby itself was not advocating for regime change. They weren't. And when it comes to the Middle East, I see the biggest benefactor of these interventionist wars.
Wait, which regime change are you talking about?
Well, you could say Syria. Sure, Syria has oil. Trump said openly, if we wanted the oil, we'd go get the oil. I hear that.
Not a lot.
But I'm sorry?
They don't have a lot of oil.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But I mean, that's what Trump said in his first admin when addressing Syria. He says he said Syria was about the oil. Now that's
no, he said we'll steal the oil once we occupy it.
Yeah, right. So obviously he was saying that it was an interest. I'm saying that the oil interest has been secondary to the security of Israel in the region, right? Israel's this tiny little state. It's surrounded by hostile nations. Yes, maybe back in the 70s, we installed the Shah. We had an interest by doing that to get Western business in there so we could get those resources. But things have changed since then. Dynamics have changed. This isn't a stagnant thing. And the power of the Israel lobby in the United States has obviously grown. And I see all those wars. Billy Bob, you said before that Iran, if Israel really controlled Trump and really had such a sway in U.S. politics, we would have invaded Iran 30 years ago when he advocated for it. Why is Iran Israel about Israel, but Iraq isn't about Israel?
Well, let me just kind of put forth, my position. Generally, it's I don't see how any of our activities in the Middle East or with Israel or all those regime change wars, how any of the billionaire class, it's not in their interest. I don't understand how. So I see what's going on. And I would say it's not all about oil. It's about control, right? It's about controlling the oil. It's about, deciding how much it's going to cost, who's going to be able to access it. So you want to control the region. You want to control the governments. You want to control the resources. And you want, so really it's about control. It's not about oil profits, right? So oil profits are secondary to control, but the main thing is the control. So, sure, Jewish billionaires, want to, they're ideologically motivated to defend and protect and enlarge Israel. But all the other billionaires are also interested in controlling that region. And they have all agreed that the strategy of using Israel as our land aircraft carrier or whatever in that region is the best strategy to dominate and control that very important region. And it's a very important region because of oil. I mean, that's what makes it very important now. So I don't, again, I agree that, it's definitely not in the interest of the working class to pursue this strategy and this policy in the Middle East. But I don't see a distinction between, why it's not in the interest of the non-Jewish billionaires, because I think there's an alignment of interest between non-Jewish billionaires and Jewish billionaires to pursue their global hegemony with this strategy predicated on, Israel is our 51st state, and they're just like us, and we're going to go to, we're going to engage in nuclear war before we let Israel get destroyed, just like it's our own homeland. And everybody's agreed on this. There's no dissent. And so this idea that, there's this Jewish lobby that's running roughshod over the, non-Jewish majority and going against their interests, I just don't think is an accurate view. I think there's a convergence of interests and what they're united in is an opposition to the interests of me, you, and Nick here. It's definitely not in our interest to pursue, this strategy, but it's being pursued not by a Jewish lobby. It's being pursued by the ruling class. But I want to, so after saying that, I do want to make Nick, get Nick in here. So, you're hearing, Nick, the two basic sides. So I'm curious where you might weigh in. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts.
I think both you guys make good points. I just think, I almost feel like the Israeli government is kind of acting independently, almost to their people as well. it doesn't really feel like Netanyahu really gives, two shits about, what benefits the people of Israel or us or anything. I think it's strictly his government and his, immediate administration. That's, I don't know what their goals are. I'm not sure. I just know that they need us to follow through with them. So,
Greater Israel.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you.
Oh, the Greater Israel Project.
The Greater Israel. Yeah. So, I don't really have. I don't know. I'm kind of more getting educated right now, listening just both sides. Because but yeah, I just see their government acting independently more, instead of really worrying about what me or you or anybody really has to say, which what I guess would be to the benefit of the billionaire class, the upper elites and whatnot.
Yeah, and that's a fair observation. I mean, obviously, the Israel government is separate and distinct from the Israel lobby. And like Darryl pointed out at the beginning, the Israel lobby itself is separate and distinct from the broader Jewish lobby, even though there's a lot of overlap in all three of those things. But they are all distinct and separate concepts too. But so, Darryl, do you want to directly respond to the idea that, while it's definitely true that there's an Israel lobby, there's a Jewish lobby that's pushing these pro-Israel, greater Israel policies, that it's not being debated and it's not being opposed by anyone in the ruling establishment. I mean, everybody's on board with it. Who are the billionaires that are trying to stop these, ethnic people?
I'll give you specific examples. But I just want to push back on the idea that there's this agreed thing that Israel is in the best interest of everyone. If that was true, why do they spend so much money lobbying? If the billionaires run the government and the oligarchs run our government, what's the point of the Israel lobby? They're just wasting money, aren't they? If all the billionaires are paying them and they're like, hey, we want these contracts, we want these tax cuts, we want these subsidies. By the way, we also want you to fund Israel. We want you to bomb Iran on their behalf. We want you to do Bibi Netanyahu's dirty laundry every time he comes to the Capitol, because he does that. He brings his dirty laundry and makes the White House wash it. They're all about ritual humiliation. It's weird. But so, yeah, I actually wrote 3 things this morning that sort of go against that. So 1, foreign wars, and drain tax dollars that would otherwise benefit non-Zionist elites, right? So you have tax cuts, infrastructure money, domestic energy, that all works, those things don't get money when we're funding overseas projects, right? The Koch brothers, they have a very libertarian tilt to them. They're non-interventionists. They're part of the oil industry. They're the second largest private conglomerate of whatever in the United States. They fund institutes like the Cato Institute that recently they wrote a paper, why Israel's not in the best interest of America, or something along those lines. So obviously the Koch brothers are not pro-Israel. Now there might be other things that the broader Jewish lobby and the Koch brothers agree on, like mass immigration. Whether from the Jewish lobby it has to do more with the demographic makeup, and the Koch brothers are more worried about cheap labor and importing and flooding the labor market and keeping wages down. So yeah, they have overlapping interests, but just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean that you support overseas interventions. These wars also damage global business interests. Billionaires in non-defense sectors, tech, finance, they face boycotts, supply chain issues, lost opportunity in Muslim majority markets. Energy volatility causes increases in cost. So when you have a war and you have these oil prices going up and down, I'm not an oil guy. I'm not a market guy. I'm not an economist. But obviously, I understand that if you're running a business, you're running an operation, if the cost of gas goes up, your overall cost goes up. And that's not beneficial to elites that are not in the same ideological circles of these Zionists, or do not benefit because, I don't know, they're making PlayStations. How does Israel benefit Sony? It doesn't. So I don't really see that. And the Middle East wars caused refugee crises in America and Europe, which we've been forced to absorb all these refugees over the past 25 years. And there are billionaires that are speaking up because they see that the social cohesion aspect of this mass migration of people is really ruining the fabric of America, of the broader West, whether it's here, Europe, Canada, Australia. Robert Mercer, Renaissance Technologies, like the first AI trading hedge fund. Robert Mercer's spoken out against these wars because they cause refugee crises. So I really don't see how Israel or these wars benefit the whole oligarch ruling class. And it seems like you say, they're sort of running roughshod over the non-Jewish or the non-Zionist aligned elites. And it's through the blackmail, through the highly organized. You can't understate how highly organized and dedicated these people are to getting their plans seen out. And yeah, that's what I think.
Greg, do you want me to go, or do you have anything to say? Because I have, obviously a bunch to say, but.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can jump off of this. I mean, it seems like you're kind of proposing that imperialism isn't a, ruling class consensus in the U.S., which is, what all these wars are about.
Oh, no, for sure.
But is just a piece in the puzzle.
No, imperialism was here before. There was like this international liberalism. Like I'm very much, I understand that we've been doing this a long time. And I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not arguing for imperialism. What I'm saying is that our imperialism has become occupied by a specific ideology that's actually hostile towards the native population more so than the previous one was, if that makes sense.
So I remember you asked, why is there a lobby? Why do they spend so much on trying to, sway people's opinions if they already have, agreement from everyone who matters? And this gets, kind of at the heart of the socialist worldview, the class-based analysis, which, asserts that, society is divided, within the capitalist system. Capitalism divides society along class lines. And class lines, of course, mean, how people relate to the means of production. So the owners of the means of production are always going to comprise an elite, wealthy minority, tremendous minority of the overall population. Whereas people who have to relate to the means of production as laborers and selling their labor to the owners to survive, we're the vast majority of people. But we are not as organized. We don't have the resources. We don't have the excess capital, to purchase our own media conglomerates, our own, political parties, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the obvious answer to the question is, why are they spending so much on, PR for Israel and constant cradle to grave? My whole life, like, it's just been Israel is good. Israel is good. Like, it's exactly that. It's to persuade as many in the working class to advocate for interests that are not their own. I mean, that is the purpose of propaganda in our class-based society, is to, try and convince the working class to be stupid and ignorant of this class dynamic of the reality, and to advocate for interest positions and programs and strategies that don't benefit them, that are in benefit of the wealthy elites themselves. And so it's an entire alignment. There's total consistency with the idea that they're funding a lot of money to PR. Like, that's entirely consistent with my worldview. So that definitely does not does not contradict my perspective. It entirely, it's consistent with it, and it validates what my beliefs. The fact that they spend all this money up here. So and then you said a lot of things after that. I was going to accuse you of gish galloping because, and it was too many, and I didn't even write them down. But what were some of the other things? That was the first one you said, and I had a response to that one, and I had a response to the others, but I kind of forgot what they were.
Yeah, I said.
I know the Cokes. Let's talk about the Cokes.
Yeah, go for it.
So and I would agree with you. Like, you conceded that the Cokes share interests with a lot of the quote unquote the interests of the Jewish lobby, like immigration and depressing wages and allowing all flooding the society with people that aren't from here in order to depress wages and be able to run whatever businesses they have, to maximize their profit. But it's interesting. I mean, I'm not sure. I could do some research. You pointed to one paper, and I would assert that's one paper out of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, that maybe are a little critical of this Israel policy. And that is totally consistent with my worldview, where you have a ruling establishment comprised of innumerable factions of interest groups with overlapping as well as competing interests that fight amongst each other to control the political power and also the policies that are pursued. And I'm saying the result of that infighting, the result of that struggle, has been what we've seen throughout history, where we've had an Israel-centric approach to foreign policy, and the fact that you have one dissenting paper, out of hundreds of thousands or millions, is again, it's just consistent with my worldview, and it doesn't contradict my position at all. You would expect to see that. You would expect to see they have robust debate among themselves what is in their best interest, and within that group, you have like we said, we have tribalistic thinking Jewish lobby, you have a nationalistic thinking Israel lobby, the Zionist lobby, and then you also have arms industries that just like war, any war is good war. And you have individual businesses, you have the oil lobby, but it's called the ownership class. That's the best way to conceive of what's going on, in my opinion, is you have an ownership class, and they are identifying their own interests as a class, and they're pursuing those interests, and they've settled on a certain strategy and certain policies that, yes, incorporate Israel as if it's the 51st state, and then very deferential and prejudicial to supporting Israel and expanding Israel and making Israel the regional hegemon in the Middle East, because it's an important area. So again, all of that is consistent, and it does not contradict our worldview. But so that was two things. I mean, those were two thoughts. You brought up the why the propaganda, which is, I mean, it's immense. There's an immense propaganda effort, pro-Israel propaganda effort. And then the idea that you have outlier billionaires that maybe once in a while will support a project that offers a different take on Israel. Like that's not. I'm not surprised that. I would expect that to happen, really.
Yeah. So, I mean. So in your worldview, that we're only looking at the world through how much money is in your bank account, right? Because like that's really what Marxism is, right? It breaks it down to who owns property, who owns money, who owns capital, and the workers. And so you just said that the way they're able to go about this and stay in power and stay the ruling class is because they are organized. So my argument is that this small faction, which I mean, 25%, 30% of the billionaire class, is a pretty significant chunk for a group that only makes up 2% of the population. I don't think you can really like understate that and not see how this is like a very special, unique phenomenon. The way that they're able to do this is because they are also extremely organized. So if your argument is that all the elites they're able to control us because they're organized, I'm saying the Jewish interests and the Israeli interests are able to rule on top of the other interests because, again, they're highly organized. So I see this faction as sort of driving the car for the past, I don't know how many decades. Obviously, it wasn't always like this. When Israel was a smaller state, we actually had debate on how we should treat them, how much aid we should give them. We even had a president that fought with their prime minister over their secret nuclear programs, right? You can read the JFK to Ben Gurion letters online. Ben Gurion calls JFK a boy. He's like, "You're not going to tell me what to do, boy." And JFK was like on the verge of, and at the same time, they were pushing the Zionist Organization of America to register under the FARA Act, which they never did. And now we have AIPAC, and they're also not registered under the FARA Act. And I see the dynamic has changed dramatically over the past 60 years, and then specifically since 9/11. That new American century seems to have benefited Israel more so than America, more so than any other nation. You have the Abraham Accords that have only pretty much benefited Israel. It was promoted by Kushner in America, but I don't know how much we really got out of that deal. You have the Isaac Accords that was just introduced in South America. That was introduced, I think it was Malay, shortly after we bailed them out. If anyone can explain why we bailed Argentina out, I'm sure your answer would be to promote American hegemony. But that right after that,
right-wing populism.
I'm sorry?
Right-wing populism.
Right-wing populism. That's why we gave them that many billions of dollars. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that why we're still why Trump said that we were going to cut off funding for Ukraine and he was going to end that war day one, and we're continuing to fund the Ukrainian war? I don't see the right-wing populism. That seems like a
well, I mean, Ukraine's a fascist state, so I mean, if you want to use that logic, but I don't think that's what's behind it.
I mean, I don't think you can discount the fact that Zelensky is Jewish and Malay is Jewish, and they both seem to promote Jewish and Zionist ideology. And I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's happening in Argentina right now. Half of Patagonia is on fire. They're being started by an Israeli NGO called like Backpackers for Peace or something. And Malay just signed a law in November that it used to be illegal, or it was outlawed to actually develop parts of Patagonia. And he passed a law that says, well, if there's fires and parts of the land is destroyed, you're allowed to develop this area. 2 months later, you get this Israeli NGO and group showing up, and they're like surveying land and starting fires. And there's maybe not mass protests, but there's protests. And the people of Argentina, they see who's doing it, and they're very aware of it. So I see the hegemony changing. I'm sure you're familiar. You have Pax Romana and Pax Britannica and Pax Americana. I see this new dynamic emerging where it's more so Pax Judaica. It seems like Israel sort of pulling the levers versus the American elites.
Yeah, let me respond. I mean, so a lot of great points. So, but essentially, your initial summary, I think, was a good, enunciation of your position. So basically, you see it as Israel, the Israel lobby, the Jewish lobby is even though they're, by your estimates, 30% of all billionaires, the fact of their cohesion and their organization allows them to run roughshod over the competing interests of other factions, and so they're kind of driving the imperial project, and they're the ones pushing the policies and the strategies. I mean, and so I think what's happening is, I mean, our perspectives are converging a little bit, because I would just argue that I'm liable to agree. Like, it's impossible for me to determine the exact percentage of these different factions and how much influence and power they have with it. But what I do know for certain is that I'm going to push back on the idea that there is any opposition to these policies. Right. So again, I don't see any billionaire opposition. I don't see any ruling class opposition to any of these imperialist policies being pursued. So, like, do you see who was really attacking Trump's billions that he wanted to give to Malay to keep the Malay government afloat? Like, nobody was opposing that. I watched the news. Nobody was saying, "Hey, we shouldn't be doing that." And then what's that?
Which news?
No, well, the establishment press. So
yeah. Can we
Fox
name
News, CNN, MSNBC?
Okay.
Yeah.
Who owned these networks?
Giant corporations.
But giant corporations aren't faceless entities. They're made up of people and boards and CEOs and executives that have ideologies. And it's not this, they have specific ideologies, specific goals. And if they're part of an ideology that promotes their thing, or if there's news that is going to go against their ideology, of course, we're not going to hear about that. And I know you guys agree with that. But yeah, I'm very much familiar with this worldview. I grew up in very leftist coded spheres. I was part of the punk hardcore movement, a lot of anarchists. My favorite band was Anti-Flag. Suicide Machines was my first live concert. Their album at the time was War Profiteering is Killing Us All. I'm very much familiar with like this vague corporate entity thing, but there's people behind it and they have a particular worldview. So if there's news that's going against their agendas, of course we're not going to hear about it. So
well, okay, but so again, you're saying that there's billionaires. I mean, the majority of billionaires, right? The majority of non-Jewish billionaires who are being silenced and marginalized by this ethnic minority, who are just. I'm saying I don't see that. I'm seeing broad agreement. I'm seeing broad, consistent agreement on the imperialist policies being pursued and on how to pursue them. I don't see any pushback, and so therefore I don't think it's necessary to make an ethnic distinction. I think we ought to see things, through a class lens, because there is no ethnic distinction. There is no split between non-Jewish and Jewish billionaires. They are on the same page. There's no evidence that they're not, and because of that, why are we in projecting our own ethnic perception into that situation? Like, that situation objectively is class based, because it's the billionaires who are in agreement across ethnic lines about how to pursue this agenda. And I don't see any poor non-Jewish billionaires being mistreated and marginalized, but maybe you want to bring up Elon Musk and kissing the wall.
Yeah.
Let me jump in about these
please,
two
Greg.
examples too. We got a lot of historical continuity. I mean, these policies, like with Malay and Ukraine, aren't because they have Jewish leaders. The U.S. has been opposing every left-wing government and backing right-wing governments in Latin America from, as long as we can look back. And, we've been backing literally the same Banderite Nazis in Ukraine since 1944. So, I mean, you can't link that to Zelensky.
Well, like the Azov battalion, these nationalist Nazis, I mean, that's a very small group of Ukraine. I mean, I wouldn't say like that's the driving policy. I mean, Ukraine was obviously an American coup, right? We're all in agreement there. The what's the capital? The Maidan Revolution was obviously a CIA-backed revolution with the help of certain NGOs, right? But again, these people have names and faces, and they have ideologies that are ethnically based. Who was the main proponent of getting involved in Ukraine? Was Victoria Nuland, right? We all know Victoria Nuland.
No, the policies goes back to 1944, FDR.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So
Anti-Russia.
Sure. Yeah, you could say like, okay, yeah, it was. You can go back to like the Soviet Union, then you can go back to basically the NATO absorbing all these states, and Russia being the bad guy. But I mean, if you're looking at when Ukraine had its coup, who were the main proponents of it? Who actually did it?
Biden. Biden was the point person for Ukraine.
Biden was the point person for Ukraine
under Obama. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And there's obviously there's business interests that were involved. But when the Maidan Revolution actually happened, who was on the ground? Victoria Nuland was on the ground handing out sandwiches to protesters.
I mean, John McCain was right next to her.
John McCain was right next to her. But so there's this term that Kevin McDonald coined, and it's Judaized Gentiles. So I would refer to John McCain in this. Another term that they like to use would be a Shabbos Goy, right? So basically a Gentile that does the work for the Jew. And I don't think that this worldview that they have should go understated. I was just reading, if you don't mind, in Epstein. I tend to ramble. I tend to get off topic, but I was just reading a Epstein email that was released that sort of highlights this. He goes, "This is the way the Jew make money and made a fortune in the past 10 years, selling shorts the shipping futures, let the Goyim deal in the real world." So that's a worldview that is very persistent in these elite Jewish.
Who said that, and what was the context? I mean, just so I know. I mean, I hear what it.
This was Jeffrey Epstein to an economist, right?
Okay.
And there's actually this sort of language that he uses when he's speaking to like Noam Chomsky as well. And so, I mean, I think it's something that a lot of people don't really know about. And this very tribalistic worldview that they have, it sort of dominates everything that they do. And Victoria Nuland being in Ukraine on the ground with John McCain, sure, yeah. But Victoria Nuland is part of the neocon. She's married to Bill Kristol, I believe, who's son of the godfather of neoconservatism, Irving Kristol. which the whole neoconservative movement is from the genesis a Jewish movement. They are defined by the left's rejection of Israel in the 60s. So from the beginning, the whole movement, the whole ideology is really dictated by the Jewish aspect of it. So I don't think that you can discount that when looking at geopolitics, when looking at something like Ukraine. The NGOs, who was the main funder of those protests and riots in Ukraine at the time in 2014, it was George Soros. George Soros, he's not a Zionist. George Soros is not a Zionist, really. But he has this same ideology that is a very supremacist ideology. And I don't think that you can purely just look at it from a class lens.
So I was going to.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask Darryl a question. So you were saying there's names and faces behind these big, lobbies and whatnot. In the future, do you see that like carrying on, like through family, like teaching their, kids to follow in their footsteps type deal, where anything will ever change, or is it just going to continue on? Because I agree they're organized and they're very, I don't know, tight knit, I guess we call it, as far as what they believe in. Just, do you think that anything's going to ever change, or maybe like some of the younger generations might possibly, break that tradition of that way of thinking?
No, because I think it's sort of baked in at this point. Because they were a diaspora for 2,000 years. If you actually, I'm not. Look, you don't have to be a religious Jew to sort of have this ideology at all. I mean, the majority of them are not religious, but they are taught that they are a special people. They are a special people. I think all groups, all different ethnicities, races are unique and are worthy of dignity and respect and all that. But that only goes as far as you treat me the same way. And I mean, nobody, you say, will it break away? I know Greg might say, you might call it an anti-Semitic conspiracy, but the Rothschilds very much are still a thing. And I was taught growing up that this is an anti-Semitic conspiracy. But if you're looking at the Epstein files, he's getting wired like $50 million at a time from one of the French Rothschilds back during the original WikiLeaks, the Clinton Podesta email dump back in like 2016. Hillary Clinton is asking one of the Rothschilds how she can offer penance because she has to cancel her meeting with him and Tony Blair. Macron, the French president, where did he come from? Oh, he was the youngest associate of Rothschild and Company in France. Alan Dershowitz, on an interview, he's describing how he met Epstein. How could he possibly meet this guy? And he very proudly states that he was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein through Lord Rothschild. And this is a family that has they've been a banking dynasty for, 400 years or something. They're highly organized. I don't know what else to say except they're highly organized. We had, I'm sorry, I'll let you go, Billy Bob, but we had sort of like an aristocratic American class at one point. We had Rockefellers, we had Carnegies, we had all the industrialists, right? We had those guys. What happened to them? Like, there's no famous Rockefeller running around these days. We have a new set. We have the Bezos, we have the Elon, but when it comes to to this specific faction, they are really good at like passing the torch and like staying on course. And they have long-term strategies, right? They think in the future. So I don't know.
You answered my question.
What's that?
You did a good job. I said you answered my question. You did.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm rambling now. I'm rambling.
No, you're good. You're good.
So, Darryl, let me ask, what foreign policy do you think would be different in the U.S. if there were no Jews, or Jews not running the country as you see it?
So my problem,
how would our foreign policy be different?
Yeah. So, I mean, my main problem is that you can't have people running foreign policy or the government in general if they're loyal to their own people more so than the larger majority, and certainly not they're loyal to a foreign state. There were, I mean, the conservatives of the time of the inception of the neoconservatives, the paleoconservatives are non-interventionists. They're fine with like we can have business deals overseas, but it shouldn't require U.S. tax dollars, U.S. military to enforce those policies.
But they're not really part of the ruling class, are they? Those people?
I'm sorry?
Are they in the ruling class to any degree?
Who? The people that I would prefer?
Paleoconservatives?
The paleoconservatives? I mean, I'm sure there's some, yeah.
Well, okay. So, I mean, what I see, Darryl, is, I have a certain perspective, right, where it's, innumerable factions with overlapping and competing interests, and, a Jewish lobby and a Zionist lobby, and, all, innumerable other lobbies, are all at each other's throats. And so what I kind of, how I, perceive your position is that you were highlighting and you were hyper focused on one particular lobby, and you're trying to make the case that this lobby dominates all the others to the detriment of, the best interests of the other factions within the ruling class. And I think Greg's question gets right at the heart of our disagreement, because he's asking you, how would the policy be different if there was no Jews involved in the policy making? And I don't think, and your first response was that, we shouldn't have people in power who are more loyal to people who aren't the American working class. And guess what, Darryl? That's exactly the communist that's the communist perspective, right? And so we say the same thing. And so our argument is that the billionaire class is loyal to itself, and they don't give a fuck about the working class. And this is the problem. And I think that it's a distraction, and it's a misperception to look at it in ethnic terms, because if there was no Jews involved, you would still have all the billionaires pursuing their own interests and loyal to themselves, to the detriment of the majority of the working class. So this is the issue. The fact that there's a powerful Jewish lobby, perhaps, in a way that's never happened in history, right? Because like you said, Israel wasn't always our vehicle for global domination in the Middle East. We were wary of Israel. We were worried that, Israel was going to side with the Soviets in the Cold War. So, yeah. But we've seen an evolution. We've seen how history plays out. And right now, the billionaire strategy is predicated on, using Israel as our bulwark in the Middle East to control those markets. But again, my major, and I think the most powerful objection to what you were saying is just to highlight the fact that without Jews there's no disagreement. There's no different disagreement between Jewish billionaires and non-Jewish billionaires. They are both loyal to the billionaire class. Now, yeah, of course, you're going to have some ethnic, personal differences, whereas, because I do see a tribalism. I see a hyper tribalism, at least, overtly, at least they put forth this hyper tribalism where, they're more concerned with, the best interest of Israel and, benefiting other members of their tribe first, and then maybe the billionaire class second. But I mean, the bottom line is not all Jews are have this understanding. Not all Jews are pro-Israel. Not all Jews are tribalistic. Not all Jews are think in terms of what is good for our tribe first. There's a lot of great Jews who are communists, who think about humanity, who think about the working class, and think about anti-imperialism and oppose imperialism and impose the imperialist agenda to basically do their best to have total global hegemony for the Western ruling class. So a lot of what you're saying isn't necessarily not true with regards to networks of powerful, influential people who happen to be Jewish, who are promoting certain policies. My argument would be that these policies are not conflicting with the imperialist agenda, and that's why they are nobody is highlighting them and demanding that we have some change, and that we put in place a government that actually represents the working class, because ultimately that was what you said needs to happen. We need to have a government in place that represents the working class majority, and you don't want them to be loyal to a tribe of people or a nation state that's thousands of miles away and is genocidal and apartheid and all that. So of course I agree on that, but the ultimate problem is the class struggle, and it's the billionaire class pursuing their agenda, and within that context, there does exist different factions, and I would just say that organized Jewry is a faction, but they don't represent all Jews. I mean, they represent the interests of the billionaire Jews, just like the white billionaires they don't represent white people. The white billionaires, Anglo-Saxon billionaires, do not represent the interests of the white Anglo-Saxon working class. They represent the interests of billionaires. And the same with the Jewish billionaires. They don't represent the interests of people who identify as Jewish, working class people. But again, you do have a very powerful narrative and a very powerful tribalistic propaganda apparatus that has convinced, unfortunately, far too many people who identify as Jewish to support these policies, such as, the state of Israel and an apartheid state and genocide, outright genocide against Palestinians. I mean, that's all true. But again, it's all happening within a context of class struggle, and to hyperfixate on an ethnic dimension, I think is just a flawed analysis, and you're missing the big picture, and you're giving a pass to all the Anglo-Saxon billionaires, the majority, who don't really represent the working class. So why are we even engaging in this lens of ethnicity? Now for people who are Jewish, like it applies, and you can see how it plays a role in that paradigm, but it definitely doesn't play a role in the white billionaires aren't thinking about the white race when they make their policies. And so
okay, well, so this is my pitch to all the Anglo-Saxon billionaires. I would appreciate if you would look out for my specific interest as your Jewish counterparts look after their specific Jewish interests. Because you're right, they don't. And I mean, I just see this lens of class to be extremely narrow. I don't see the real world actually. When I go out in the street, I don't look at people based on their wealth. That's not how everyday people interact. There is absolutely an ethnic dynamic. There's absolutely a social dynamic, a cultural dynamic. If you have groups of people, so let me ask you this. This is kind of a loaded question. Is America a white country, a traditionally European nation? Is it? And is that important for the future of America? Does that dictate? Does race have anything? Does anything to do with America?
I love this conversation, Darryl. I want to let somebody else answer. And
say, I think it has everything. It's literally everything in America. Like, I can't think of anything that takes precedent over that. Obviously, there's, separates by class, like upper class, lower class, all that, the elites and whatnot. But yeah, race is everything. That's just how I see it. I don't know. I feel like the laws, the way people, get broken up into, I don't know, they're different. Let me take that back. Sorry. The way we interact with everyday people, like you had said, is through like a racial lens, I believe. Like that's what we see, it's what we assume when we look at somebody, it's just our natural stereotypes. So I think it's everything.
I imagine the billionaires of every color and ethnicity would be thrilled to hear us saying this, that we think it's all about race, because they know it's not.
No, it shouldn't be. I don't think it should be. Just it seems like it is.
I wish it wasn't. I wish that. Well, I mean, I wish it wasn't, and I wish it was. I'm sure, Billy Bob, I agree with you. I like diversity, right? The world would suck if we were all the same, right? And I believe America, while it was primarily European and specifically Christian, Hispanics and African Americans are absolutely part of this country. And I don't think that they should be given any less rights, any less privileges than white Americans. I think they are essential to the fabric of America. It's created America. I mean, culturally, I mean, all the things, some of the things I love the most, Black African Americans, that's sort of redundant. Black Americans contributed to all the music I love, right? But I don't think you can separate if America, if we take America and we take half of India, where India's like, I don't know, 1 billion people, this is not the same America. And with a certain people, with a shared heritage, language, religion, tradition, that influences your laws. That influences how you're going to treat your neighbors in the world, how you conduct business. I don't think you can remove the ethnic dynamic from this understanding of what's going on in the world. And Greg, you had said, I wish that these Jewish billionaires, whatever, I'm not going to find the exact email to read it off, but it was basically between Jeffrey Epstein and another, I forget who it was, but he refers to a dinner that they have with the JP Morgan executives. And he was like, thank you for your Goyim dinner. They might be wasps, but they're not too bad. Like, so they have an ethnic like lens as well. It's not like this, oh, we're just all up here and it's us against the workers. It's the bourgeoisie versus the workers. No, they have their own tilt. And we have the same tilt down here. And
but you're not getting invited to the WASP banker dinners, are you?
I don't want to.
But it's not an option.
Yeah, but why do I want to? Like, I mean, yes, I understand.
Good for you for not wanting to, but that's, you're not.
We ought to want to be enfranchised politically and economically. We ought to want to be able to influence the policies, the political policies, the economic policies that are decided upon, and we don't, because it's dominated by a billionaire class. And the billionaire class might have factions that have overlapping and competing interests, like the Jewish lobby, but overall, it's the billionaires that are deciding the policy, and they are interested. Their overlapping interests, part of their overlapping interests is to disenfranchise the working class and to not allow us to influence or obstruct the policy making that they want to do. And guess what? Again, their policy making, even the Jewish billionaires are not deciding policies on the best interest of the Jewish people. They're deciding policies on the best interest of the billionaire class. And that's why they are aligned with the rest of the billionaire class. And that is why sensible people who identify as Jewish, who are working class, understand that and reject that the billionaire narratives that are promoting the policies like Israel and genocide. Anyway, shoot, I had a lot to say, Darryl. I had a lot to say, and then it just escaped me in that last outburst.
Well, all I would say is I'd say the ethnic dynamic. Okay, I'm not deep.
Yeah,
okay, I'm sorry. Let me just one sentence. I'll let you go. I'm not saying that there is not class warfare. Okay, I want to be clear. I do believe there is class warfare. Believe it exists, and there's different factions of this ruling class, and the elites. But it is just as important to me. Other issues as well. And I mean, the ethnic portion of the makeup of America, the demographics of America matter just as much to me as this ruling class lens that you're viewing everything through. And so I would say that, and in this ruling class, there is a specific faction that is working against my view and my ethnic interests, because it is a real thing. I am a white guy. I didn't choose to be this way. It's just what I am. And there's a specific faction that is working with like very hostile intentions towards my interests as far as demographics go. I don't think it's wrong to say I want to live in a country that speaks, looks, acts like me, with a specific culture and background and tradition and heritage. I don't think that's like inherently evil. I think that that's natural. I think every race of person feels that same way. And I'm sorry, I said one sentence that was more than one sentence, so I'll let you go.
So no, I mean, I appreciate you articulating as succinctly and clearly as you can, that understanding and perspective. So let me try and put that in my own words, and then I'll address it. I mean, essentially, you're saying that you have certain desires. You want things to be a certain way, and you point it as like a natural inclination for certain people to want to have a country that they can call their own, and that kind of looks like them and has the culture that they're familiar with. And I think this is typical. And I think a lot of people share this view. And I really think that the billionaires do a great job of, inculcating this desire and then weaponizing and manipulating it, and to again keep us divided as a working class. And I think from the very beginning of socialism, you can see that the whole point was to transcend, religious, ethnic, gender differences, and to unite, as a working class, to take political power away from the oligarch class. And it's way harder to do when they get people to think in terms of ethnicity, think in terms of religion, because then, that's easy to manipulate these kinds of perceptions and these kinds of interests, and to make sure that we are never able to overcome those differences and unite in a political force that can actually take political power. And so, we've seen, the United States, of course, I mean, we understand the history of the United States, right? It was European colonizers came, they committed a genocide, right? They utilized slave labor, and they built the country that we have today. And we've seen, the oppressed minorities, over time have managed to, I guess it's arguable, but, improve their situation in society. And I think a rational perspective, the socialist perspective, says that, all people are created equally, like, whites, blacks, Indians, Asians, like everyone, deserves, like you gave lip service to, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. It's like, I mean, immigration, obviously immigration is a very complicated issue, and there's all kinds of perspectives and views on it. I understand that a lot of people want to maintain a country where it's a white majority, and they don't like the idea of having all these different cultures coming in. I don't really understand that. I mean, I've lived in a lot of places and I've been a minority in a lot of places. And for me, like, I do really genuinely appreciate diversity, and it doesn't bother me. Like, I don't give a fuck that if, you know, this country becomes a minority white country, like that doesn't. But I understand. I understand that to certain people that is important, and I would just say that.
Would you advocate for? Would you ever say that Africa is too black? Would you ever make that argument? Or if we decided to immigrate, let's say we wanted to bring 100 million Americans, white Americans, to Nigeria, and the Nigerian population was against that. How would you feel? Wouldn't you flip it and sort of say this is like colonization or something, or you guys are taking advantage of their resources? Wouldn't that be the argument? And I mean, I had a lot to say while you were talking. Now I'm sort of just like running off my head here. But so for your ideology to work, we have to strip everyone of their identity, right? For Marxism, what you're promoting is we need to get rid of all these labels, all these self-descriptors. You're not white, you're not black, you're not Christian, Muslim, you're not all this. The only thing you are is a worker. And because you feel that way, then the idea of a massive demographic change in America actually helps your ideology. It's self-serving. It's the more multicultural, pluralistic America gets, the only thing that's going to bring us together is this class ideology.
Well, I mean, I made the opposite argument that I think it's obvious that it's easier to unite the working class when we have a homogenous, like, I mean, look at China, right? So China was able to overthrow their oligarchy, and they put in a government that represents the working class majority. But again, they're like 90%, you know, ethnic Han Chinese. And so they don't have, you know, all the divisions and points of fracture that a oligarchy can utilize to keep them from uniting and making this political force that's capable of achieving those things. So I think it's harder when we have, you know, a lot of religious ethnic diversity, and it's very easy for the oligarchy to use their, you know, their ownership of the platforms of mass communication to fracture us and divide us and confuse us. And I think that's obviously what they do very successfully. All I'm saying is that the only way we're ever going to have political representation, political enfranchisement as a class of people, as a working class, is to overcome our ethnic, our religious differences. And so, I mean, I don't see those things as paramount. I see these things as they're great. And I mean, differences are great. I like diversity, but we can't let that diversity get in the way of us uniting and recognizing the reality of oligarchy, class warfare, class struggle, oppositional class interests, and then developing a political force capable of fixing and improving the situation. And the situation is an oligarchy. It's a class-based oligarchy. And again, I think when we talk about, oh, it's an ethnic-based oligarchy, it's just the Jews, like, you know, we're missing the plot, and we're being confused, and guess who benefits from that? Well, it's the oligarchy, because it just means that we don't understand reality, and we don't understand what we have to do to fix reality and to improve reality. And again, from the oligarch perspective, from the perspective of the non-Jewish billionaires, this system cannot be improved upon. This is the best system possible. Any attempts for the working class to improve this system are going to make it worse from their perspective. And they're going to fight to keep us from making it better from our perspective, because when we make it better from our class perspective, it becomes worse from their class perspective. They have less power. They have less control. And so it's a zero-sum game. Class warfare is a zero-sum game. And when we confuse and we let ethnicity become paramount, it's just a recipe for perpetual oligarchy. And it's a recipe for, we will never be able to overcome the oligarchy because we don't understand it. And we're not talking about it, how it really exists.
So because All right. So we're both in agreement that whether you gave the example of China being like 90% Chinese, I'd give the Scandinavian countries as an example, right? They have huge social programs. They seem to be more represented than the rest of the West as far as their government and their policies are concerned, the working class, that is. And that's mainly because they're mainly a homogeneous multiple countries right there. And we also have mass immigration in America that's causing stagnant wages because we're being flooded with cheap labor. And then the oligarchs are also benefiting because we're injecting all these different cultures and people into the mix, keep us infighting. So we're in agreement, correct, that the massive demographic changes that have happened over the past couple of decades in the West are a bad thing, and they serve the oligarchy. Is that what we're saying? We're both in agreement that mass immigration is not good for the working class?
Well, I mean, obviously, the immigration policies that we've had have been implemented by the billionaire class, and they wouldn't have implemented those policies if they didn't feel those policies were going to be in furtherance of their best interest. And as we can see, they have been, because, like I explained, like you explained, it has had the effect of driving down wages. It's had the effect of polarizing the working class, setting us at each other's throats because of these cultural differences, ethnic differences, etc. And so, yeah, no, they are happy to exploit these benefits of immigration. But I would just argue that, immigration itself is not the problem. That's a policy, that's a symptom of the actual problem, which is oligarchy. The problem is the oligarchy, and we're not going to fix any of our problems. Now, so what kind of an immigration policy would we have if we had a government that represented the working class? Well, guess what? I don't think if we stop trying to imperialize the world and, destabilize and exploit and steal the resources from all the other countries in our hemisphere, I don't think we would have a lot of people trying to come here. That's just it. The only reason they're trying to come here is because of imperialism and because of, the oligarchs' efforts to steal all the resources and destroy all the societies that are south of our border. So I think if we had a working class, we would have a totally different paradigm, a working class in political power. We would have a different paradigm where we wouldn't have the crises that we have now. And so we talk about this immigration crisis, but it's a political football. It's a political football that they utilize within their two-party sham oligarchy. And, one party says this, one party says that. Both parties are owned by the same, forces. And it just turns into a political football. And it gets us to avoid the reality of oligarchy and avoid what we need to do, is setting aside our ethnic, religious, cultural differences and uniting as a working class to put in power a government that really represents our working class interests. An ending of imperialism, an ending of, going around the world, destabilizing, stealing, exploiting resources, and causing people wanting to come here to escape the hellholes that we have created in their countries. Like, it just makes sense.
I was going to jump in real quick and just say, I think the best way to mobilize like this entire group used to be, at least from what I understand, was through unions. And tons of the policies they've been implementing have been anti-union, right to work states, which is not really right to work, but
right.
So to overcome all of our differences that they set in our way, and then you throw, just trying to even like conceptualize overcoming that obstacle of, taking down like the elite class, it makes it seems like it's too much. So there's no really way to organize a mass group of people to get to that goal.
Yeah, no, look, to me, it seems daunting. Like the idea that we are going to be able to overcome their, the mass psychosis, the mass indoctrination that they have subjected all the citizenry to, with their ideas that are totally detached from reality, overcoming, their ownership of the banks, the economic system, overcoming their ownership of the political system, overcoming their ownership of the media system that, every day propagandizes and lies to us. Like, it's daunting. Like, that's a lot to overcome. I'm just saying that's our only hope, right? I mean, that's the only way forward. That's the only way for improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So as impossible and as daunting as it seems, like, we ought to all recognize that is the way forward and engage in the work, even if it seems hopeless. I mean, it's all we can do. Like, what else are we going to do? So, and unions, definitely. Go ahead.
On the immigration issue, it's good to clarify something. Everybody agrees the oligarchs, capitalist class, goal is to drive down wages. Immigrants is just one tool. Like Nick was saying, smashing unions is another one. Never raising the minimum wage is another one. Outsourcing manufacturing is another one. They can fuel unemployment, right? So, that the goal has nothing to do with immigration.
I heard a great point on outsourcing, and it's like, the illegal immigrants that come into the country to work in the fields and the factories, that's one way they offshore those industries that can't actually be moved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just an interesting perspective and way of looking at it. It's, they can't move fields. Like, we're gonna have the fields. So what do they do? How do they offshore it? Well, they allow, they have this system of illegal immigration, and it's really good for the oligarchs because, like you said, it drives wages down and it allows them to, just maximize profits. Really, I mean, they're just
right now Trump's kicking out.
Really highly exploitative, very, very exploitative to these workers who, because we have destroyed their societies, it's still in their best interest to come here and do that, compared to what the opportunities they have, in their societies that we've destroyed. But the unions have definitely been identified as a problem for the ruling class to destroy. And ever since the 50s, they have gone to work undermining working class power. And they've really done a good job. I mean, it was with the unions and it was the civil rights movement that they dismantled all of the assassinations and, attacks on, organizers and civil rights leaders. It's all been a war to ensure that we can't unite, that our leaders are murdered, and anybody that represents a threat, and a threat just means somebody who's articulate is going to rally the working class to the obvious reality. So they've really been very successful at destroying unions and wrecking any kind of political power that the working class has. But again, we have to point out what's going on, articulate the obvious, and then what are we going to do once everybody has this shared understanding? Well, we're going to just do what we can. But yeah, it seems daunting. It seems hopeless. I definitely agree with that, Nick.
Yeah, I don't want it to be that way. It does seem daunting at times.
Yeah.
So I was gonna offer Darryl membership into the Communist Party, and I'm sure he's ready. Just kidding.
I'd say that I've read Marx, I've read Engels, I love to read just anything I can get my hands on, whether it's, all across a whole bunch of topics. We're speaking very narrowly here on certain things. I'm in agreement with a lot of the criticisms of capitalism, the way it works. I think that I'm all about nationalizing certain industries, providing legislation that it's not just about raising wages. It is. We could raise the minimum wage and tax the certain sectors more, certain billionaires more, remove subsidies in different industries, have the government not serve this ruling business class the way that they do. But I think there's certain parts of it that I feel like just sort of remove reality, and the world's much more complicated. There's more dynamics than strictly class, obviously. That's what we're talking about right now. But no, I'm all for criticizing the elite, the business class. I recognize it exists. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying that there isn't some unspoken agreement that they all know what's good for them is good for everyone. But I'm not really sold on we need to eliminate all other forms of identity. We need to the religion is the opiate of the masses. I'm not on that side, and communism has had its own. We've had this discussion, Billy Bob. It has its own flaws and atrocities. So we're both sort of history revisionists, and we'll advocate for our own sides and our own favorite governments of the past. But yeah, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not quite there.
No, I understand. No, I mean, no, I think I appreciate today's discussion. I mean, we're an hour and a half in. We don't have to run just yet, but you know, I think it's important to just compare and contrast our perceptions and our opinions. And I think I want to see more of that. I want to see people talking and, you know, having, because I think, you know, again, I think you and Nick are both genuine, right? And you're not, it's not like, because I think a lot of times what happens is the left wants to say anybody on the right is bad, or the right wants to say anybody on the left, they're just bad people. And I think 99% of people we can reason together, we can agree to disagree, and I want to get better at you know, convincing people and arguing my position to make it more appealing and compelling to others. And so that's my interest in having these discussions, just kind of, you know, practicing my rhetorical skills. And because I really believe that I have something to say that's important that people need to understand. Like, I genuinely believe that. And so I appreciate, you know, having you guys to have that discussion with. But at the same time, I realize that you probably feel the exact same way that I do, but from
Absolutely.
a different perspective. And so that's why, you know, dialogue is essential and good. And no, I assumed I did not convince you to join the party after today's discussion. But you know, we disagree. We disagree on the you know, the overall importance of the class dynamic. I think the class dynamic is just fundamental. It's really everything. And it's under this class umbrella that all these other dynamics exist. And I don't think ethnicity or race is driving things. I think it's the class dynamics that drive foreign policy, that drive wars of intervention, that are driving us to World War III today, that are driving a war with Iran, that are going to drive a war with China. Like, these aren't, you know, ethnics. Like, it's not because we hate Chinese people that we're going to be. Now, it plays a role. It's related, because guess what? They're gonna start demonizing Chinese people. Like, right? I mean, that's just gonna be part and parcel of selling us war with China in the future. And so you've just got to dialectically understand how these things relate to each other, and understand, you know, the relationship between these actually existing, you know, things. So, but yeah, no, we disagree. I mean, you know, in your mind, it's like, no, ethnicity is way more important than I'm giving it credit for, and class is a more subordinate thing. And I'm saying, no, class is the.
Well, I'm not saying it's subordinate. I'm saying it's right there on the same field. Yeah.
And I would say it plays a role. It plays a role, and to the extent that, you know, the oligarchy can get us ignoring class and thinking in terms of ethnicity, that's the extent to which they're winning, and they are furthering their interests of maintaining, you know, their dictatorship over the rest of us. And I would liken it to a dictatorship. I mean, you know, we have two options, really. We can exist within a society that is governed by a dictatorship of the wealthy elites, or we can get our own dictatorship. And I would argue that China is currently the best and most successful example of a working class dictatorship. And you know, how the government, a government of for and by the people, can really discipline and keep the billionaires in check and under control, and serving the broad-based interest of the society, and of the majority of the society, instead of allowing the oligarchs to actually control the government and subordinate the interests of society to their own oligarch interests. So China, of course, I always point to as a success of something we can learn a lot from. But yeah, no, I mean, in this country, with the way people are indoctrinated, the way people are taught to think, it's just, yeah, it's very very daunting to think that we can ever overcome that and achieve what China has achieved. I think what might end up having to happen is, as China ascends, the United States is going to become more and more irrelevant, more and more impoverished, and more, screwed. And I don't want that, right? Because I mean, it's my country, and I want the best for my country. But anyway, Greg, what are your thoughts? Like, you've been hearing the back and forth. I know we are in tight ideological agreement, and I like the fact that you kind of articulate things in your own way, even though we agree. And so I learn a lot when I not to build you up to make it anticlimactic. But what are your general thoughts about the discussion?
Yeah, I generally agree with what you're saying. General thoughts. Just wanted to go back a little bit more on this immigration thing to look at something that's happening. We're getting rid of immigrants, but what's happening to our pay is getting eroded due to inflation and the deterioration of the dollar. So the attack on our wages is the goal, and that stays intact, even when we're mass deporting.
Yeah, so I'd like to highlight that I wouldn't say that the problem's necessarily capitalism right now. What we have a problem with is banking and finance. So when you're talking about the deterioration of the dollar, and it's not just the government budget, right? I've heard you talk about the IMF, the World Bank, how we've sort of what's the book, The Economic Hitman. We leverage that. We have in the past for the benefit of us and for the benefit of our business interests. But I think when you look at Wall Street, and this is the main problem here. We need financial regulations, right? I don't think it's this whole ideological class thing. I think you can just attack finance and banking, and you could solve the majority of these problems.
So, and I mean, you have a particular advocacy, and you said, hey, if we just improve this one little thing, and I guess our point is that you don't have any influence over what they do, and they're going to do what they want to do, and that's the problem. So you can want whatever you want, and it doesn't matter what you want, because ultimately it's a dictatorship of the oligarchy, and so in a sense, you keep on focusing on it's immigration is the problem, it's the finance. No, none of those are the problem. Those are symptoms of the problem. The problem, of course, is oligarchy, and the solution is overcoming that oligarchy. So I mean, you could say, hey, I would be happy if my billionaires, the ruling billionaire dictatorship, if they just do some financial reforms, then I'll be happy. But guess what, motherfucker? They're not going to do that because they don't give a fuck about what you want. That's it. They don't give a fuck about any of us as far as the working class goes. So they're not going to do that. So so that's what I'm getting mad now. That's what liberals do, right? Liberals they advocate for these things. They wish, hey, this reform. And all of that is just bullshit, because they don't have any power. Like, who decides the policy? It's the oligarch class that's deciding the policy, and they are attacking the working class, and they're making sure that we are confused and idiotic and divided and have no political power whatsoever to influence any of these obvious changes that need to be made. There's a lot of obvious changes, starting with an ending of imperialism, shutting down our 1,000 foreign military bases, stopping the perpetual wars, stop supporting genocides. Like, all of that is obvious that we should do, but they're not about to fucking do it because they don't give a fuck about the working class. That's the whole point. This is class struggle, and this is how it plays out in our society and, around the planet in general. That was a loud, angry rant. Anyway, I mean, obviously, I think these things need to be said. Like, I think I think this is what people need to really clue into and understand is going on. And I think that there's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of misperceptions about what socialism is, what communism is. There's a lot of ideas out there that are not related to reality. And so it's discussions like these that we can all kind of, understand where we're coming from and address our different positions, our different perspectives. Nick, any thoughts?
I was just going to say,
you can yell.
Oh, no, no deal. I was just going to say, I know you're saying like these obvious problems that need to be fixed. And how Darryl mentioned like the banking or immigration, there's got to be some kind of inroad that we can make on something, because it stays that giant thing.
Through what
if we can make it.
That's
what I'm asking is what do you think? How do we make inroads on any of those? I mean, if you can make inroads on one of them, then you can go to the next thing, or at least try to make progress, to the bigger picture. Like if you can fix or try to make some kind of fixes with finance and immigration and whatnot. I'm just trying to think of a way to get in, because we're not even in that conversation now. Like we're not even, we're just outside and just seeing this giant thing. We need to make some kind of inroads somewhere to get the ball rolling in a more productive direction for all of us. So I was just curious
anybody want to take that?
Well, so Billy Bob's suggestion is just we need to eliminate all forms of self-identification till we're all just piss poor ants working in the mines. And it doesn't matter that guy's black and that guy's from Honduras, but we're all just working in the mines together. And at that point, we will be able to rise up as the working class, as the proletariat, and overthrow our overlords. So
I think that's a straw man, Darryl. I'm going to reject that as a total straw man and unrelated to anything I've said or thought the past 10 years.
Silly.
No, I didn't realize. No, I thought you were that was funny then. That you were being sarcastic. I appreciate the sarcasm if that's what it was. No, I thought you were kind of not trying to be funny, but no, that's
there was a tiny bit of truth in there. Greg thought it was
no, but
any thoughts, Greg? Before I do my best to answer Nick.
No, go ahead.
Okay. So no, I mean, it's daunting. Like where we're at, what we're up against in this society is definitely daunting. And so your question is, well, what can we do? Like, how do we make inroads? And I mean, I think there was a Malcolm X quote that vaguely said, you can't expect movement from the masses until they've woken up, right? Until they understand the situation. And so I think, right now, the need is to kind of explain. I mean, I think what I've been trying to explain is the reality of our situation. I think if more people were appreciative and understood the reality of our situation, we would have more opportunity to actually, develop some kind of a political force that could actually start making some inroads, making some changes, making some progress, and forcing them against their own interests to give us the reforms that we kind of require. But and again, I think to do that, you have to have a movement that is not dishonest about the reality of the situation, that is not, because I think the Democratic Party is just as corrupt and bought and paid for and just as much a tool of the oligarchic dictatorship as the Republican Party is. And so they have this two-party system where they play each other off. And what they try to do with the system is they try and convince the people that politics is choosing between one or two of these oligarch parties. And that way, heads they win, tails we lose. And so we have to understand that, that's a dead end. And, we need to develop our own political apparatus. And to do that, we have to, inform people and get people interested. And I think in the next few years, I think we're really going to see some huge tumultuous going on the planet and in our country economically. And I think we'll have an opportunity to reach more people because they're going to really think, oh, well, what the hell is going on? And they're not going to have the luxury of remaining ignorant. They're not going to have the luxury of being apathetic to what is taking place. And that'll be an opportunity to really, try and get people's opinions and develop a mass movement that is capable of, influencing the reality. But no, I mean, if it's a mountain, like we're at the very bottom of the mountain and we're looking up, Nick, and so that's just the reality of where we are right now. But I think there is optimism. Another reason for optimism is China and Russia and the anti-imperialist countries who are doing a lot to displace and reduce the power of Western imperialism. And I think that is how the class struggle is playing out, in the 21st century on an international stage, is the struggle against Western imperialism and the resistance to Western imperialism. And I think, this is scaring the imperialists. The rise of China, Russia not being defeated, Iran, not just laying down and surrendering. Like, all these things are causing big headaches for the oligarchy, and it's all related. It's all interrelated. So geopolitics is related to domestic politics, and so it's understanding this relationship and understanding, what is going on and who we should support and advocate, and what policies we should advocate for. But anyway.
Good response. Thank you.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Darryl.
Jump in real quick. What was that? What was that Malcolm X quote you gave?
It's stupid to expect movement from the masses. Once you get the people to wake up, that's when you'll get movement. It's something like that.
Okay.
That's a very vague.
So I mean, it's funny that you mentioned Malcolm X, because he obviously had a very racial lens to him, and not just a racial lens, a religious lens as well. And I'd say that his ability to organize through those two lenses against the ruling class seems to work very well. So if you're asking, how can we make headway here? How can we organize? Obviously, the people that have been able to organize the best was through a racial or religious lens, right? And funny enough, you can find a video. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with who Norman Rockwell was, but he was the leader of the American Nazi Party back in like the 50s and 60s. I believe he fought in World War II, comes back. Now he's a National Socialist. You can actually find a video of a Thanksgiving turkey fundraiser that Malcolm X is doing at his in a mosque or something, and Norman Rockwell is there. So you have this black revolutionary and a supposed white supremacist supporting each other for the same cause. So I think you can organize through that lens and work across the board. Now, both of those groups were very separatist. They thought that we should only have whites with whites and blacks with blacks. So, I mean, there was a commonality there that sort of brought them together. But I think that just that highlights my argument that there is more to this than there is just class, just pure wealth accumulation. And if you're asking how can we actually make headway in the current moment as we stand right now, I think maybe that's a good way to go about it. Whether you're with Rockwell or whether you're with Malcolm.
Yeah, I mean, and that's interesting. And I mean, I think I want to clarify that, I am not for people to deny or not have pride in their culture, their heritage. Like, these are all great things. Like, I'm opposed to hating other people for their differences. But I think, like, it's great to have diversity, and we can all be proud of our heritage. And so I'm not for people denying their heritage, denying their whiteness, denying their blackness. And I'm not, it's not anti-religion either. Like, I think, most communists today think it's a mistake to try and, outlaw religion and tell people that they can't worship God. Like, and I don't think that ever really happened. I don't think that happened. I think there was, historically, there was some antipathy towards religion because religion was being weaponized against the working class, by the oligarch class. And it was that kind of thing that caused the working class governments crack down and to to discipline a certain religious movements, etc. It's like the Falun Gong, right? The Falun Gong are a cult in China that is absolutely outlawed. And are they outlawed because of religious? No, they're outlawed because the fucking CIA runs them and uses them to undermine and do all kinds of nefarious things within China. So it's not an antipathy towards religion per se. So, and then in Nicaragua, of course, we have all kinds of Catholic socialists that vote for Ortega, because Ortega runs Jesus, Marxism, and Ortega. Jesus, Marx, and Ortega. That's his campaign slogan. And so we're not against religion, we're not against personal identity. We're just saying, hey, let's not weaponize our own personal identity and hate other people because of it. I don't know. I love diversity. I want to be around diversity, but I realize not everybody's like that. Some people genuinely want to avoid diversity. They want to live in a community. They want to go to work at a workplace where everybody looks like them. And so it's tough. It's tough for me to appeal to those people if they're all caught up and hyper focused on that. I would just appeal to those people and ask them to maybe rethink their views and maybe understand that diversity isn't so bad, and maybe that if you maybe move your focus to other things than skin color or culture, you might see that it's necessary to make allies and to work in common purpose with people that don't necessarily look like you, or have your same language as their first language. You know what I'm saying? So it's
right.
It's a very
Nation of Islam, American Nazis. They're not overthrowing capitalism, right?
Yeah, because
and they have
we
communist parties who have.
No, I mean Farrakhan has a lot of good criticisms, right, of the status quo, but he's also got some views that are definitely I would oppose and that are not in agreement with socialism. So and then of course, I mean, I guess you could argue too that there was some Nazi rhetoric, at least rhetoric, maybe not actual actions, that was in opposition to capitalism and oligarchy, but in reality, I think they functioned as a tool of capitalism and oligarchy to destroy actual resistance, which is socialism, communism, Marxism. But guys, okay, I'm done. We've had a great long discussion. I hope we can talk some more, and I'm gonna keep in touch with all you guys through instant messenger and whatever. But if you guys think about things that you want to challenge on, or points that you want to discuss in the future, just let me know, and I'm happy to convene another roundtable where we can do that. And so I know Darryl and Nick, it was your first time live streaming, and so I think you both did a great job, and I encourage you to let me know when you want to do it again, and we can definitely do this again.
Well, I appreciate the offer. I appreciate you talking to me. I appreciate the conversations we have. So, yeah. Can I plug a book? Can I plug a book real quick? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Culture of Critique. Anybody? It's the evolutionary analysis of Jewish involvement in the 20th century. It's a pretty hefty book, right? This is very academic. This is not the Elders of Zion. This is good source material. If anybody wants any more on the subject, especially from my slant, this is a good place to start. But thank you, Billy Bob, for having me on, brother.
No problem, Darryl. We'll do it again. Greg, any final words? We should plug a book. Freaking Darryl plugged a book.
Yeah,
what are we gonna
I don't have one. Thanks.
Nothing comes off the top of my head. I mean, there's all kinds of interesting books. I know Domenico Losurdo is one of our best philosophers, and he died rather recently, but all of his books are absolutely fantastic. And of course, we just recently lost Michael Parenti, another legend, a great thinker. Just so anything by Parenti is good. Anything by Losurdo. Okay, guys, we will reconvene. I know I'm going to be doing episode 185 or 86 on Tuesday. We're going to be talking identity politics on my Blowback podcast. So it's
Are
going to
you
be
sure
identity
that's not what
politics.
we just did?
You know, it's going to be more focused. It's going to be focused on how identity politics is weaponized. It's a lot of overlapping stuff. But yeah, we actually have a great guest from Iceland. I think he's going to be streaming live from Iceland. But so I think me, Ian, and this gentleman will be streaming on Tuesday. So we hope to see everyone then. Thank you, guys. We'll keep.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it. It's nice talking with you guys, Darryl and Greg. Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you. Nice meeting you, Nick.
too.
Thanks, Greg. I appreciate you, brother.
Likewise.